Broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everyone and welcome to this latest edition of the WilmsFront featured interview show on this Thursday, the 24th of June, 2021. We are going to be going back to weekly WilmsFront interview shows starting from this week. We are live tonight on the Tim Wilms D-Live channel and the Unshackled's YouTube channel, as the current strike on the WilmsFront channel won't expire until tomorrow. We are, of course, live on the interactive entropy software, where throughout the show you can ask either me or my guest a question, or better yet, send through a super chat. It is 8:50 p.m. here in Melbourne. Apologies for the late start. Currently here in Melbourne, despite 2 Sydney cluster cases being detected here today, Victoria will still be moving to what I'd term medium level restrictions at 11:59 p.m. tonight. You can now have a medium level party at your private home with 15 visitors to be permitted per day under the public health orders. 50 people are allowed to gather outdoors. I'm not sure if that's enough for Victoria Police to not shut down any more protests. Masks will still be mandatory in all indoor settings. These current settings will now be in for 2 weeks. Acting Premier James Merlino told us yesterday. Apparently, Premier Dan Andrews is due back on Monday, which will be interesting to say the least. Some better good news is South Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania and Queensland will let us Victorians escape starting from tomorrow. So my advice to all Victorians is get out while you can, if you have the means, while there is an escape window. The footy also returns to Melbourne this weekend at 50% capacity. The A-League Grand Final will also be held at Amy Park in Melbourne, allowing my team, Melbourne City, the opportunity to win their first league championship on home soil against Sydney FC. New South Wales, for the past few days, has recorded local COVID cases in their teens, as the Bondi cluster, beginning from a limousine driver transporting international flight crew last Tuesday, continues to spread in Greater Sydney. As the lockdown calls grow louder, Gladys has to date maintained her aversions to the hitting the lockdown button, sticking with today, or she introduced yesterday, tight restrictions, including a mask mandate for Greater Sydney, the Blue Mountains, Central Coast and Illawarra, and limiting home visitors to 5 per day. This is because this Delta variant, Gladys has said this is the scariest period that Sydney has been through the pandemic, adding to what our Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, said the Delta variant is like a guerrilla fighter. Positive cases today were detected at the New South Wales Parliament, including a staffer and the Agriculture Minister, Adam Marshall. Adding to the positive case to the link to the Sydney cluster detected in Melbourne today, a Sydney-linked COVID case spent several days in Wellington, New Zealand, which is now at alert level 2, despite them detecting no local cases in the Kiwi capital. But the result is that most trans-Tasman jurisdictions, as they open up to Victoria, are now slamming their borders shut to Greater Sydney and New South Wales. My guest tonight is a Sydney-sider who, while he's not locked down, is pretty close to grounded in the city. It's my pleasure to return back to the show, the always opinionated and entertaining Kyle Kutasi, lawyer and president of the HR Nichols Society. He recently took part in a robust debate on Resolute TV with transgender ADF officer Dana Pam. I booked Kyle for tonight's show to discuss the just announced New South Wales budget. This was a few weeks ago. The New South Wales budget, like all other state and federal budgets during this end of financial year period, delivers more debt and deficit spending to pay for all these COVID control measures and rolling shutdown costs. Kyle, welcome back to WilmsFront.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a delight.
Well, as I said, you always have very strong opinions. I think I previously referred to you as a ranter like Alex Jones. I'm not sure if you believe in the same conspiracy theories, though he has been proven to be right, Alex Jones, over the past couple of years.
I'm certainly can't say that appealing to Alex Jones is something I aspire to, but nonetheless, I appreciate I know you meant it in the best possible light.
I wasn't trying to, paint you in a negative light, that's for sure. Now, I know that you, back in pre-COVID normal times, were quite the jet setter and globe trotter, and you've been very critical both on various show appearances and on your Facebook page of our national leaders on the Fortress Australia policy, or as it's now being referred to as the Hermit Kingdom, and we're still it seems that all the state premiers and the federal government are still chasing an elimination strategy when it comes to COVID.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we've discussed several times before, as the rest of the world now has been coming out of pandemics, they're effectively over everywhere else in the rest of the world. Something like, is it 80% of Americans have now either had a vaccine or have had COVID at some point. We're still going back into lockdowns, and it's precisely because of the policies that we adopted over 12 months ago now, which was to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. And there's nothing I can say on the show today that's going to be any different to what we were saying 15 months ago, Tim. The way to approach it back then was the same way it should have been approached today. But governments have gone down this road here in Australia, and they're sticking to it. And it's proven electorally popular. Any government that's tried to show any sign of weakness when it comes to dealing with COVID-19, in terms of weakness meaning not worrying about it, has been absolutely punished at the polls.
And Scott Morrison has walked back completely his language from the 2020 about we can't hide under the doona, flick the on off again switch. He saw the election results in Queensland last year and Western Australia this year, and Scott Morrison, he ain't called Scotty from marketing for nothing. There's an election due in a year. He wants to win, and seeing that, well, the coalition knows more than any other party that strong borders is an electoral winner, and as we've seen, strong state borders over the past year is an electoral winner, and that's why he's basically rubber stamping all the various lockdown and restriction measures, not being critical at all.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. He smells the electoral wind, and he sees that there's votes in it, in being seen to be a lockdown freak. I mean, I don't think his heart's in it as much as it is, say, with Dan Andrews or Anastasia Palaszczuk.
You looked out the clown, of course.
Sorry, so I missed you there. Sorry.
You, Mark McGowan. I called him a clown.
Oh, of course, McGowan as well. You're quite right. They have that triumvirate of Labor premiers has absolutely relished in denying people's freedoms, using public health scares as the reason for doing so. But hey, we've been worn down, Tim, after all this time. No one's listening. Nothing changes, no matter what facts get presented. The same things continue to happen. Worldwide, I don't know if you've seen the stats. The total death rate is now under 1%, and that's of everyone who's had it, that knows that they've had it. I've got a 90-year-old client who just a couple of weeks ago got tested and showed she had antibodies to COVID-19. So she survived it and didn't even know she had it, and she's in her 90s. This has never been as dangerous as it has been painted out to be, and time will continue to prove that right.
Well, we've just had the big lockdown, the 7-day circuit breaker lockdown, which turned into a 3-week lockdown. We're in the easing period now in Victoria, but I think there was only one who genuinely went to ICU. The ones who were infected in the nursing home, they took them to hospital anyway, but because they've been vaccinated, they were fine. Even the ones in their 90s, nobody got seriously ill. And we heard about these people who, the reason we had to lock down is because they'd been working for 10 days in the community while infectious and asymptomatic. We've gone from, as originally was that flattening the curve so hospitals wouldn't be overwhelmed. Now it's just whacking any possible transmission.
14 days to flatten the curve, Tim.
It's more like 14 months. It's been 14 months so far.
It's been more than that. Yeah, we're in the 16th month of this now.
And even Gladys, her strategy of basically suppression has also wavered. I mean, if we go back to a year when the Melbourne second wave travelled north to Sydney, that was late June. Gladys kept Sydney and New South Wales open throughout that time with the same level of restrictions, 20 people inside, 20 people outdoors, no masks, just banning singing and dancing at weddings. And it got to a few days when it got to around about 20 cases, but there was never any panic. Well, I mean, you're in Sydney at the time. There was never any panic that things were going to lock down. There'd always be this peak, but it always went down again. But now you have Gladys with, as I said, the cases are in the teens. They haven't even hit 20 yet. I think the Northern Beaches cluster over Christmas, the highest that got to was 30, and then it went down. All the proportionate measures that Gladys had the past year, they've gone out the window this year.
Yeah, and interesting that you're quite right. I've noticed how this has just continued to escalate in terms of the response, despite the small numbers involved, and not one single person yet, as I understand it, has gone into any form of hospitalisation. Nonetheless, it's probably, if I had to hazard a guess, it's probably because you've now got politicians testing positive, and they want to be seen to be doing something. That's my guess. But I try and understand why politicians do things, Tim. I think you need a degree to be able to do that.
From my base level analysis, it seems like public health is now the new national security. The reason why governments are always over the top with national security laws and giving authorities powers is because they're scared that if something happens, if someone dies, they're going to get the ultimate blame, and it'll be because they didn't take these enough measures. So it doesn't matter whether it's terrorism or COVID. It's the politicians. They'd always err on the side of giving the various bureaucrats more powers just to be on the safe side without thinking of the knock-on effects.
I'd say it goes more than being the excuse. I'd say public health is almost now a religion. It's the excuse that's used for just about everything that needs to be done. There's a reason why we couldn't have a postal survey on same-sex marriages, because it would cause people to commit suicide. There was a reason why we had to have a Black Lives Matter march in the middle of the COVID pandemic that was supposedly killing people, because the risk of racism to people's self-esteem outweighed the risk of the pandemic, Tim. I mean, public health is the ultimate explanation for everything the government wants to do that's anti-human liberty.
I just want to pick up a point with the Black Lives Matter protests during the pandemic. They're COVID safe events because the progressive like those events. So any event that you want to do in public during a pandemic is COVID safe. Any event that you don't like is a super spreader event. That's how it works.
That's right. Apparently, this politicians' dinner is a super spreader. It's people going to look. There's going to literally be millions of academic theses written on COVID-19 and government reactions and human reactions to it, and it's going to be fascinating reading over the next couple of years. And just as the coronavirus lab leak theory has only taken 12 months for everyone to basically get on board, we're going to see the same with this, Tim. Everyone's going to get on board eventually.
Yes. When I was referring to Alex Jones before being right about a lot of things, he was talking about conspiracy theories, things that were termed conspiracy theories about 10 years ago, which have now become true. There's sort of lead time now between things being conspiracy theories is now about 6 to 12 months. Oh, vaccine passports, that's just a conspiracy theory. Well, here we are now.
Look, if we want to talk about Alex Jones quickly, I mean, I'm not one for conspiracy theories. I never have been. But there's a lot of things that get painted as conspiracy theories these days that aren't actually conspiracy theories. When it comes to things like the lab leak theory or COVID passports, I would say Occam's razor. Almost always the simplest explanation is the best one. What is a more likely explanation? That bats from 5,000 kilometres away bit a cow, bit a dog, that bit a human and caused the virus? Or is the best explanation that Wuhan, that has the bat virus lab, where 3 people got sick in October last year, is the best? It's a lab leak. I think Occam's razor tells you it's a lab leak. And the same goes with COVID passports. What's more likely to happen? The government says, yeah, all right, we've been locking everyone down for all this time. We've had border controls, but now we're going to open it back up again, but we're going to open it to everyone. Or we're going to open it up to only those who can prove that they're vaccinated. It's pretty obvious. It's not a conspiracy. That's how the mind of how these people work.
Crescio makes an important point here about the also what's crept over the past 12 months as well is the QR codes everywhere. That I think in New South Wales now they're bringing it. So even if you go to the supermarket or the milk bar, you have to QR check in. That was brought in recently. Victoria.
No, we've had it for over 12 months now. Everywhere you go, you got a QR check in.
But it wasn't always compulsory in all states for it to be supermarkets and like retail shops. It was always compulsory in hospitality, those sorts of places, but not basically everywhere where you wanted to make a purchase, which is what all the states are moving to now. And this is why it's so easy. And Scott Morrison said as much. We're saying, because everyone's got the QR code app now. Oh, you just download the Medicare Express app and it's got your a vaccine certificate, and it's up to whatever authorities to like what they want to do with how they want to demand that. He sort of basically implied, I felt.
Yeah, it has become ubiquitous, particularly in the last couple of days too. I've noticed it really coming back with a vengeance, but yeah, people have traded their liberty here. Everyone gave it away. They felt very happy to give it away. I think this is a new norm, mate. I don't think it's going back.
Well, it certainly seems to be the new normal in Australia, but it's certainly not they're going more back to the old normal over in the United States. They don't have these QR codes in every venue across all the 50 states, and also many states, Florida and Texas, have banned vaccine passports. So how on earth is Australia ever going to be reopened to the rest of the world? Like Tourism Australia, I'd come to Australia, but you're going to have to need this app to actually go anywhere. You're going to need all these papers, digital papers, to get access to certain things. Who's going to come to Australia for that when they're having a close to normal summer in North America? Even the UK, which has been is still a bit slow to come come out of all their restrictions. They delayed their Freedom Day till I think July the 19th. So Australia is just going. It's almost going to be like a democratic China nearly by the time we open up.
Yeah, it's just so depressing, Tim. I mean, I gave up after a couple of months of trying to convince the general population. I mean, there's people, of course, who feel the same way that we do, but we're in a tiny minority now.
As I know on your Facebook, you've given thoughts to, sadly, you're not famous enough to get an exemption to leave right now, but are you considering, I just saw a post from Stefan Olivier, the Bitcoin podcast guy. He's just got an exemption, and it's a one-way ticket for him out of Australia to the United States.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that the US is necessarily any better. Maybe certain states of the United States are, you might be left alone a little bit more. But for most of us, mate, we're attached here for a whole range of reasons. We've got work, we've got families. It's hard. It's hard. It's just this. I think what you're referencing. This is not the Australia that I grew up in. You know, the population has changed significantly. People wouldn't have copped this 10 years ago, even, let alone 40 years ago. We've changed for the worse. And it's not just COVID. COVID's just, if you like, shown the symptom of it. Deep down inside, the psyche has changed. And it's very sad. It's very sad to see. And I really hate paying taxes to fund the majority of Australians, because quite frankly, I hate the majority of Australians.
Well, we've seen the growth of the nanny state in Australia in the 21st century. I mean, the tobacco taxes have just kept rising and rising. Well, it's over over what is it, $1 a stick for a packet of cigarettes. It was started by the Rudd Gillard government, but they just keep going up. And now there's, imagine my shock that there's all this illicit tobacco market, which, federal police resources are being aimed to combat. This preventative health apparatus. It's all turbocharged, but we were heading in that direction, Australia, with all these. It's gone from nanny state to now health fascism is the current descriptive term.
Well, the same thing, aren't they?
Well, it's the nanny state is the road to health fascism.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still purchase cigarettes, but what is it? Most of it's tax. It
is something now. It's something I've never smoked in my life, so but yeah, people tell me all the time that it's like ludicrously expensive to buy a pack of cigarettes these days.
You mentioned that you hate paying. Well, you're a small government person. You hate paying
very ridiculously small government.
Yes, but taxes at the moment are only funding so much of this the super state that's being built around, because we hear all these about all these contact tracers being paid and all these testing clinics and that. A lot of people don't stop and think that this is all really expensive. What is it? The PCR tests are close to, $100 for each one. And if you're processing, say 50,000 tests in a state a day, I hope I get the maths right live on air, that's $500,000 a day.
It is something like that. If you say 50,000 a day, that's $5 million a day.
Yeah, $5 million a day. I knew I'd stuff.
Yeah,
$5 million a day. That's even worse.
Well, I mean, I know you were going to segue into the New South Wales budget, and I'm happily go there right now.
Go for it.
I mean, we just saw the Treasurer 2 days ago announce an $8 billion deficit in New South Wales, which almost entirely comprises of extra spending on things like vaccinations, on things like employing people to wipe down bus seats, I mean, you name it. I can go through all the things in the New South Wales budget where you scratch your head and go, why are we paying for this? And it's not just COVID-related stuff. There's a range of other things. At the same time that they're telling us that we can't leave home because we're all going to die, they're giving $100 vouchers to every child to be able to learn to swim. Not really following why the government needs to encourage Australian children to learn to swim, given that they almost all already do.
Can I jump in there? Because we found out during the Victorian summer, because we were locked down so much that a lot of people forgot how to swim because they were banned from going to the beach, and there were a lot of drownings over the Victorian summer. And so, well, this is another thing, that government is spending more money to basically try and correct the problems that were caused by their various restrictions and shutdowns.
Yeah, I think it's a stretch to argue that 12 months caused everyone to forget how to learn to swim.
I'm just jumping in there with a fun, or not a fun fact, but just because people dying is not, but just a interesting side note, side effect of the pandemic.
Quite. I mean, I think probably one of the biggest ones will be the sedentary lifestyle that a lot of people have adopted in the last 12 months. It's probably been a significant amount of weight gain for many Australians, and that will have its own health effects where we'll probably have to turn around in a couple of years and start funding people's diabetes medications. I think we already do to some degree, but there's probably going to be more of that. And it's the government reaching to just about everything now is ludicrous. And we now have subsidised preschool here. We have subsidised swimming classes. We have subsidised art classes. The list is endless. And these are Liberal governments here doing this. Imagine if it was a Labor government. They just pick all this stuff up and go, thanks for subsidising. Now we'll create a new welfare scheme. We'll create a new subsidy. We'll create a new tax. But thanks for all the ones you've already given us. When is someone going to cut taxes? When is someone going to stop spending money? We're supposedly having a gigantic property boom here in Sydney at the very least. I think the same probably going around most of Australia. So there's some people making a lot of money. Why does the government need to go into further debt when apparently people are making a lot of money? Who pays for this eventually? And the answer, Tim, is that one day, assuming you have children one day, they're going to be paying for it, because all deficits today mean repayments by future generations. That's the way it works.
Or you can just inflate your way out of debt, which our Reserve Bank has. But it's inflation is the silent or hidden tax. And the reason why we have what is interest rates consistently below 1% in Australia, that means that the Reserve Bank continues to print more money, and that is the reason why we're having a property boom. And it was these types of conditions that led to the financial crisis of 07, 08. And I'm getting into Austrian school economics a bit now.
I'm an Austrian. Yeah.
So, this is why the Australian economy seems like it's doing well. That despite us being the hermit kingdom with these snap lockdowns for a lot of 2021, we seem to be doing okay, because it's all being the day of reckoning is being postponed with just more and more debt. And if genuine inflation takes off, such as price inflation, because not many people call housing booms what they are in inflation, and the Reserve Bank has to put on the brakes, we're in real trouble.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How many clients I've got who are absolutely mortgaged to the hilt, and the only reason they're surviving is because they're paying 3% interest. If they were paying 10, 20, remember 20% interest rates in the late 1980s? These guys.
I was born in the late 1980s, but I know of them.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't borrowing money in the late 1980s either, but it's a famous tale. And yeah, there's a lot of people who went absolutely bust in that period. We had all the great corporate collapses of that era, the SCASEs and the bonds and the tricontinentals and all that kind of stuff. That's what happens when you got expensive debt.
We were talking about fleeing Australia. Is there a term called basically, what is it, debt fleeing, like to get out of obviously a day of reckoning in a country? You're being a, what is it, debt refugee?
Debt flight, maybe something like
that. Because as you said, it's, what is it, the children of tomorrow. If you migrate to a country with, I'm not sure if there is a country with balanced budgets at the moment.
China, isn't it? I mean, I'm no fan of China, but they're always balanced, aren't they? How else does everyone borrow money from China if they're not balanced? Someone always has to be. That's the other side of the ledger. If you're borrowing money, you're borrowing it from someone else.
Yes, that's the great mystery of it all.
Probably Saudis. I can't imagine Saudis running budget deficits with all that oil money.
Now, even though you're not in lockdown in Sydney, these severe restrictions, they still basically mean that most events are cancelled. Even when, there was the, Delta scare that you had back on Mother's Day. This is another coincidence. All these clusters seem to align either with a public holiday or with a school holiday period. When was it? It was also in Bondi, Barbecue Man, as he was known. He infected his wife, and because there was a missing link, Gladys limited gatherings to 20, dancing and masks inside. There was still a whole bunch of events that were cancelled, even though she claimed she wasn't overreacting. Well, at least they didn't close down the whole city like they would have done elsewhere, which is, well, that's a low bar. But because of the new restrictions in Sydney, an event that I know the H.R. Nichols Society sponsors, the Australian Libertarian Society Freedman Conference, has had to be postponed. Very
sadly. Well, was it formally postponed or cancelled? Either way, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it says on the website, alsfc.com.au, that it's postponed. Last year's was a Zoom only one. I noticed that the poster or the slogan for this year was vaccinate yourself against statism. I think certainly the vaccine rollout against statism in Australia is going even worse than the actual COVID vaccine rollout.
They might have to start holding it offshore as a way of actually managing to hold it. It's terrible for everyone. I mean, Queensland just closed its borders to New South Wales, as I understand, yesterday. Can you imagine? We're in school holidays right now. Can you imagine all the tourism operators in Queensland who are just absolutely smashed by this, as they have been for the last 12 months? And yet these guys keep turning around and voting these people back in. Mind you, the Libs aren't any better, but well, marginally better. But mate. Anyway. It just, well, nothing's going to, mate, if nothing's changed after 16 months, why is it going to change now?
I think you're right in that regard. Now, despite the fact that, pandemic politics is the dominant strain in the news at the moment. There's still other, pre-COVID government shenanigans going on. We had, Scott Morrison granted himself an exemption to go over to the G7 in Cornwall, where it was a special guest of the G7. I basically called him a hanger-on there, and when he was doing the press conference with Boris, when they weren't announcing a free trade agreement, just that we've got a very good idea of what one might be, and then Boris basically said, yes, Australia is very interested in net zero emissions by 2050, and when COVID is not dominating the headlines, it's either a cultural Marxist issue or it's the climate apocalypse, which tends to resurface in the news. And both of these issues, any level of the Liberal Party is basically too timid to take a stand on.
That's right. So someone's just said that my camera's very unfocused, so I'm just hopefully that fixes the problem. Sorry, say it again. I was trying to fix the camera.
And net zero emissions, that's poked its head up again. I was saying that when COVID dips a bit from the headlines, it's either climate change or cultural Marxist issues which rise to the top of the media political circle again.
Yeah, I know climate change. Geez, we're talking about that in 40 years' time. Again, that's one of those ones. It's like a permanently in either direction. You'll never be able to prove it. You'll never be able to disprove it because it's such a amorphous blob of an idea that every piece of evidence can test in its favour when they want it to, and every piece of evidence can go against it when they want it to. The one thing that's killing the climate change argument in the general public is that the general public is not seeing the world warming up, and they can tell that they're not seeing the world warming up. They're waking up in the middle of winter to the same cold mornings, and it's in the middle of summer at the same hot days, and that's where, again, it's where we win the battle, really, I think, Tim, these days is hearts and minds. We've got to put the ideas out there. We've got to explain them because we're on the side of truth, Tim. Everything we say is true. Sure, we might get some things wrong around the edges, but our core worldview is the correct one. There is no doubt about that in my mind whatsoever. And time will tell. Even in our lifetimes, maybe some of the things that we stand for will not be popular, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we will win, or future generations will win. Will reap benefits of that. It's a shame that we don't get to see it, but we've got to keep the fight up against these things. But forget changing politics, forget changing Supreme Court judges. They're just a reflection of the population as it is. It's a battle of ideas, and programs like yours are important for that purpose because they get those ideas out there, Tim.
Unfortunately, and I haven't mentioned yet that most of the ordinary Australian is still glued to the mainstream media, and 7 and 9 News with their 6 p.m. news every night. They beam in the pandemic porn, which gets everyone unscared, and they show the supposed full hospitals in the USA or India, and show, look how bad it is there. Thank God we've got all these restrictions, short, sharp lockdowns here to keep you safe. It's 7 and 9.
Keep who safe, Tim? Tim, the chances of you or me or anyone.
I know this, but this is what the mainstream media, the free to air networks do. Both the newspaper mastheads, News Corp, and the 9 newspapers. And the reason why I mentioned Scott Morrison basically sort of going along with what Boris said about net zero emissions, because you have the mainstream media journalists talking to each other, on the Insiders program and what else saying, yeah, Scott Morrison can't afford to be left behind here with net zero emissions. We can't be a pariah. Yes, he's going to be like bagged by us talking about it all the time. That's basically how it works. The politicians still listen to they're easily badgered into submission by the mainstream media journalists at the press packs, and also by social media as well. They still think that Twitter, any type of social media, like I saw a 9 News poll that said Sydney-siders support a lockdown, just a viewer poll, and the quiet Australians, they're still not they're either not getting the right messages or still not being heard.
Yeah, well, I mean, but when has the media ever not been that type of organisation that badges the general public into a leftist view?
They're worse now because they're on their last their last gasp. They continue to die. All they've got left is to just scare people out of their wits about and outrage people about everything.
But you're talking about traditional media. Even the non-traditional media is the same. What social media does the same thing. Mumbrella or whatever new age website. Sorry, I lost you there. So
I'd still consider them mainstream media. Mumbrella or Pedestrian TV or Junkie, Crikey. Well, the New Daily.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Well, if we're talking about that, then I agree. But what would you call now non-mainstream media?
If obviously we're on a non-mainstream media platform, I'd label something as the Independent Australia as non-mainstream media. For example, they originally broke the story that Barnaby Joyce had impregnated his then media advisor Vicky Campion, but it didn't become a news story until Sherry Markson reported it in the Daily Telegraph, and she got the award for the story that the Independent Australia broke the previous year, which nobody paid attention to.
Yeah, well, that's true. And doesn't that prove the point, though? I mean, generally speaking, who's getting their news from non-mainstream sources? Isn't that what makes it mainstream? Is it sort of moves from the fringe to the mainstream, and that's what it becomes? Anyway, we're talking semantics.
I would say that a non-mainstream media news outlet is one that's not in the circle. Like all of these, no matter what they work for at the various time, these journalists, they're all in the the mainstream journalistic tent. That's what I'm talking about. That circle.
Yeah, but the way other than Alex Jones, which journalist wants to be the one who goes out there 18 months ago and say COVID isn't as serious as everyone else is making it out to be? Everyone just needs to calm down. Who's going to do that? Who's going to stick their neck out in the line and do that? If you got balls, you're not probably a journalist in the first place, to be fair.
Well, the only one you can think of in that regard, and the reason that they can get away with this is because they've got such a already established influence, Alan Jones. I mean, I was just before we started watching him. He's the only one that really goes out there to sort of say, look, we just need to look at all of this in perspective.
You got me started here. I'm going to put something to you. With the exception of being a monarchist, what conservative thing has Alan Jones ever stood for?
Well, he's currently against all of the cultural Marxism in schools. I mean, that's a conservative value. Get them back to the basics. Teach traditional Australian history. I mean, he was a school teacher himself.
So he's against safe schools, basically. Okay.
And critical race theory, because that's the new thing that they're trying to push.
Okay, so he believes in a traditional liberal education. Okay, I grant him that. What else?
Well, he's obviously against all of these big government measures to combat so-called climate change.
I'm very dark on the idea that Alan Jones is some form of conservative hero. I think he argues for some populist cases from time to time. Populist cases, the vast majority of the population doesn't like paying a carbon tax, and so he was against carbon tax. The vast majority of the population thinks that safe schools is a terrible idea, so he's against safe schools. But that guy never ever puts his neck on the line for any true conservative cause. He wasn't against same-sex marriage because same-sex marriage was popular. He also quite quietly probably likes it too. He was a huge fan of Mr. High Spending, High Taxing Tony Abbott, and because he backed him to the hill. I can't think of anything over the years that Alan Jones has truly been conservative on, with some very small exceptions. He loves government intervention, loves government spending on projects that he likes. He's huge on governments building roads, huge on governments building tunnels. He wants to see big canals built across Australia. He's an old style big government conservative, if you want to use those terms, which are actually contradictions. But if you want to use that as a phraseology that explains his politics, and that's popular to a lot of people. I understand that. It's almost Trump. It's almost Trump-like. And without getting onto that topic, my views on the Donald.
Yes, it's been well established that you're a hard man to impress or please when it comes to politicians or people in the mainstream media.
I was so disappointed. The DUP in Northern Ireland just had Edward Poots as their leader, and I thought, this guy's fantastic, and he lasted 3 weeks in the job.
Now, when we spoke at the end of 2020, that was when, ICAC had again exploded in, had explosive testimony from Gladys Berejiklian, where she admitted that she'd been in a close personal relationship with disgraced former Liberal MP, Daryl McGuire, and this was obviously very, as I said, people just assumed up until that point that Gladys was just married to the job, and it was quite a shock to everybody that that she'd had this secret boyfriend, and. There's Daryl McGuire there. But her personal life, again, came onto the political scene. This was, I'm not sure, tell me if you agree, but this looked like a very staged photograph here by her sister, Mary Berejiklian, with her new boyfriend, Arthur Moses. SC was the caption, Friday afternoons with Boo. And Arthur Moses was Gladys's legal representative at that ICAC hearings. And I suppose how they began to start dating is after a testimony. Arthur said, "So I guess that means you're single now."
Really, I actually didn't know that part about about what he apparently said to her. But
no, that's everyone's sort of thinking maybe that's how it happened.
Oh, right. Okay, I see. Well, good luck to them. If they're happy, I'm happy.
But the reason why I found this, this was the biggest story in Sydney last week, not the COVID outbreak, which has continued to this week. But obviously, people like to say, politicians' personal lives are none of our business. Why in the media reporting this? But the thing is, I reckon, because there was her personal life became such a political issue last year, and she the boyfriend that she had was, and she did the media strategy she did last year was really good in that she's like, I fell for the wrong guy, haven't we all done this before, ladies? There was that Daily Telegraph splash, was I thought I was gonna marry him, I've given up on love, and then there's this in my opinion, staged photograph to show, look, I found love again, and it's with this nicer man. And what is that? David Elliott, the police minister, said on LinkedIn, he's definitely a. And I think that despite what the public say, they are secretly curious about a lot of politicians' personal lives, and obviously this is also still a politicized relationship because he did represent her at ICAC, and I noticed that the blue drops on Twitter, they're allowed to be grossly sexist when it comes to Gladys Berejiklian, saying, he's the one that defended Christian Porter against an independent inquiry, and he's also representing Ben Roberts-Smith in his defamation trial. So even though people say they don't care about, and we were just mentioning Barnaby before, he's back after 3 years in the wilderness because of his personal life.
What I'll say is it's interesting, the double standard. When have you ever seen anyone reporting upon the personal lives of Labor or Greens politicians? It almost never, ever happens. And some of them have extremely bizarre personal lives. And they're perfectly entitled to do that. I however, seem to think the other way around. I actually think that I expect a standard of behaviour from MPs as leaders that reflects the standard of behaviour I would expect from leaders. And I guess because I have a moral code, I find that most of that behaviour to be appalling, regardless of whether it's a Labor person or a Liberal person. So I actually think everyone should be fair game in that respect. It's a pity, though, that they only seem to make right-wingers fair game on the basis that they're hypocrites, which they are, by the way. I won't dispute that. But equally, the Greens and Labor should be outed for the things that they do. And I mean, you even see it in America. The only reason anyone knew about Katie Hill's interesting love life was because it involved a staffer who then ran a discrimination case, and that's the reason why that ended up in the media. But did you follow that one? This was about a year ago. It was
yes, I remember that. That was when they was, what is it, smoking bongs during this threesome.
Having threesome, yeah. It was and didn't naked photos of her end up on the internet or something like that. It was just. Yeah, it was just abysmal.
And then earlier this year we had this was after the Brittany Higgins revelation, which the update we've got from that is now a brief of evidence has been handed to prosecutors about her alleged rape by a former colleague inside Parliament House. Then there was a few weeks after that the Tom the whistleblower revelations reported by Peter Van Onselen on the project that these male staffers had been masturbating on MPs' desks, including a female one, and that's when Scott Morrison made his speech the next day saying women have put up with this crap for many years. But the truth of it, this was a group of gay staffers who were masturbating on the desks of MPs who were against same-sex marriage. And when Corey made his bestiality slippery slope comment, they decided to have an orgy in his office. That was the actual story, but there was obviously Peter Van Onselen was clearly implicit in there.
Corey said that if you allow for same-sex marriage, the next demand will be for marrying multiple partners and bestiality. We've already seen the push for both in a serious way, Corey was sidelined by Tony Abbott. Let's keep remembering that Tony Abbott was the one who dumped Corey Bernardi for those comments. Tony Abbott. Oh, you get me started on my favourite topic again. The greatest communist that ever was Prime Minister of Australia.
But you're sidetracked from the point that I was making, and this is what we were talking about before, that the media even if it's a sex scandal, which is completely of a different variety, as with these gay staff wankers, they tried to say, oh, this is further example of misogyny in Parliament, because one of the MP's desks they happened to masturbate on was Nola Marino's, because they didn't like her because she was against same-sex marriage.
I know, but I mean, this is how the media paints these things. You know, it's always the fault of those who they don't like, regardless of the factual circumstances. None of this comes as any surprise, though, Tim. I don't know why it shocks anyone that this would happen. It certainly doesn't shock me.
Well, it should be shocking. That's the thing. It shouldn't be.
I agree. Yeah.
And then we had the Christian Porter historic rape allegation, which the defamation case that Christian Porter launched against the ABC and Louise Milligan, you would say it was settled, and the ABC tried to spin it as it was a back down, but they basically admitted, it could not be proven even beyond reasonable doubt or on the balance of probabilities. We're basically just reporting an allegation. That's all we're doing, which is a back down.
I'm going to say something that you might not like to hear here. I think Porter lost in both moral and legal terms. Yes, the matter was officially settled. And yes, they paid him something like $120,000 or whatever it was officially, right? He would have spent close to $500,000 on that case to get to where it got to. That's all out of his pocket. Yes, the ABC paid for, $700,000.
It would have cost him, and he would have known this, cost him way more to actually go to court, and then it would have dug up all of the various sexual encounters he'd had over the years in evidence and cross-examination. I mean, we're seeing with another defamation trial, Ben Roberts-Smith taking the Nine network and newspapers to court. I mean, all the dirty laundry that is being aired about him, that he's set. The latest is that he's set fire to laptops. And so Porter would have known that would have cost more to go to court, and more would have come out. I mean, he's got ex-wives as well.
When he announced that he was running the case, I thought it was strange. I mean, I don't claim to be an expert in defamation law. I have had some cases that have run, and I use expert counsel. In fact, Porter's counsel is the same one I generally use in most of my matters. And I know her quite well. For me, it seems like it was a strategy. I'm not speaking with any authority here. I'm not familiar with the inside of his case, other than what I read about in the news. I thought he was just trying to heap pressure on them. The problem is with the ABC, they're using taxpayers' money, so they don't really care how much it costs them to defend the matter. They'll go to the hilt to defend it because someone else is paying for it.
And he is also, he's paid by the taxpayer, so that's taxpayers' money.
Everyone involved was being paid by the taxpayer. Porter was being paid by the taxpayer. ABC was, the judges were. Every single person involved was getting paid by the taxpayer. Unfortunately, that's a product of the system that we live in. But, I actually think Porter came out of it poorly, both PR-wise and legally. Nonetheless, that's what he did. It seems like every politician in Australia is running some sort of defamation case at the moment. You got Barilaro. There's another guy called Frank Zumbo who used to work for Craig Kelly. I think he might even still work for Craig Kelly. You had Lionhelm and Sarah Hanson-Young going at it. I think that's still on appeal. Everyone seems to be running a defamation case, Tim.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the John Barilaro defamation case against Friendly Jordies. Now, Friendly Jordies, well, in my opinion, is a vile person, and he's been relentlessly going after both Gladys and Barilaro for the past year, accusing them of corruption, and both Gladys and Barilaro have tolerated it Barilaro up until this point. And so it really escalated. Like obviously there was the defamation case, but his Friendly Jordies producer Christo Langer was arrested and charged on June 4th. The video was posted to Friendly Jordies channel by the New South Wales Fixated Persons Unit for alleged stalking of Barilaro in 2 alleged incidents. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this, because Jordies tries 2 different things. He's like, I'm being persecuted for being a journalist. But why are they going after a comedian such as myself? And you have to, you can understand to a point why Barilaro would launch this action, because Friendly Jordies hired Barilaro's B&B last year to have sex in it to own him, apparently. And the most recent one was gate crashing one of his events dressed as Luigi, which obviously has a racist Italian connotation to it. He said sexist things about Gladys.
Remember the racist meltdown because someone called Chris Cuomo Fredo. Remember how racist that was. But apparently you can do it to John Barilaro, and it's okay because it's someone from the left who's doing it. Yeah. Anyway, I cut you off.
I'll let you say your piece about this case now.
Well, look. There's no doubt in my mind that and I've seen the videos that you're referring to. There's no doubt in my mind that Geordie, I'm not going to call him Geordie. He's not a friend of mine. Jordan Shanks has no doubt in my mind that in his videos he defamed John Barilaro. There's no doubt about it. As a politician, you've always got to be careful about choosing to sue people because you're held to a higher standard when it comes to defamation. There's a defence of public interest, and what is said about you or me as a private citizen, Tim, is different to what is said about politicians. And as well, you've got what's called the Barbara Streisand effect, which I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that before, but Barbara Streisand once famously sued someone, and effectively by doing that brought to everyone's attention what she was suing them for, and actually spread the defamation wider than it had ever been before. So in other words, it's like you get what you're asking for, so to speak. Nonetheless, Barilaro's made his decision, and that's what he's chosen to do. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's a lot more will come out in the wash. The cops don't just go and arrest people because someone turns up to Barilaro's car and tries to hand him a document. I think you'll find when the brief of evidence comes out about Mr. Shanks's assistant that the guy spent all day following Barilaro around, harassing him. I think that's what you end up finding that happened. I don't have any authority for that. I'm not aware of anything myself, but that's what my gut feeling tells me. Quite frankly, someone has a right to be left alone.
Hadron Anti-Bullying made a interesting comment here that Christina Keneally literally replaying about jokes online and the extremism inquiry, and Friendly Jordies supports that. Yeah, he's done all these chummy interviews with Christina Keneally, Tanya Plibersek, Bill Shorten. He and Kevin Rudd now are besties. I mean, they both have toxic personalities.
Well,
and
are they separated? Are they separated at birth? There's no one. Well, there's maybe 3 people in Australia with more viciousness in what they do than Malcolm Turnbull, Kevin Rudd, and Jordan Shanks. They are extremely excruciating people to listen to, smarmy, full of themselves, and it'll be great to watch them all get knocked down a peg.
But I noticed obviously there's a lot on Twitter who don't like Jordies. Like, I mean, he's pissed off a lot of the leftists as well that attack them, but saying like, oh, I can't, like, look at this state apparatus going after Jordies. This is not what a fixated persons unit should be doing. And Hadron also mentioned that Christina Keneally, with her, well, she's the main driver of the extremism inquiry at the federal level. Obviously, this is the how stupid the modern left are. They now cheer on the national security state, these counterterrorism fixated persons unit, as long as they go after racist, fascist Nazis. But they don't think for a second that, if a government that we don't like gets into power, they might use it to persecute us. They're
the racists and the fascists and the Nazis. But the point is that you're right. To Christina Keneally, extremism is not Stalinists or Marxists or eco-terrorists. To her, extremists are people who want to homeschool their children. That's an extremist in her definition. And so when you approach from that basis, it's no surprise that those are the people that she wants to see prosecuted.
And for so-called, Geordies, influence in, shilling for the Labor Party. I mean, he was, Jodie McKay's biggest cheerleader, and she fell over after the Upper Hunter by-election. Despite Geordie's campaign against John Barilaro, his National Party got a 4% swing. And it was interesting, the Labor shills before the Upper Hunter by-election. Yeah, we can definitely win. This is going to topple Gladys and Barilaro when they lost badly. It's like, we're never going to win anyway.
What about Malcolm's candidate? Was it got 6% of the vote?
That was to be expected. I mean, the only reason people knew about her is because she was Malcolm's candidate.
Well, is that guy got like the inverse Midas touch? Everything he's ever touched has turned to sand. Politically, anyway. I mean, he might have had a good business touch.
Which one, Malcolm or Friendly Jordies?
Malcolm. I'm talking about Malcolm.
But so Chris Minns is the new Labor opposition leader. He seems like just basically a typical slimy New South Wales Sussex Street. I mean, what is he? He's close with Sam Dastyari, which says a lot, or was close.
I've never met the guy. I don't know anything really much about him. Almost all leaders of New South Wales Labor come from the so-called right faction of the New South Wales Labor Party, which generally means that they're not red flag wavers, but they're still lefties. They're really no different to the left of the Liberal Party. They just like trade unions, whereas the left of the Liberal Party doesn't like trade unions. That's really the only effective difference between Labor right and the Liberal left when it really boils down to it.
Now, I think to conclude our discussion, as I mentioned, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Scott Morrison is now very focused on doing whatever is needed, even if it means keeping Australia closed to win the next election, which I think will be the latest, probably May next year. But he could lose it if the vaccine rollout there's not that sprint at the end, because he's being like, Labor at the next election, just like in their campaign ads, just need to have on repeat Scott Morrison saying the vaccine rollouts, it's not a race, and it is absolutely intentional when acting Victorian Premier James Merino says it absolutely is a race. And also here's stubbornness when it comes to the quarantine camps. He keeps saying hotel quarantine has been 99% effective, yet it keeps leaking everywhere.
Man, I don't know. Being in New South Wales is bad enough. I don't know how you put up with being in Victoria.
Well, we've got the two Sydney Link cases now in Melbourne. Everyone's wondering, well, will that will that make us go back into our fifth lockdown? Because what is that? This is the Delta variant. Apparently now there's
beast strain.
No. Well, what is it? It's also the guerrilla fighter strain, as Brad Hazard said. I mean, what is that at the daily press conferences? Hazard, I've created a lot of highlight clips of Hazard's various doozies at the 11 a.m. press conferences. Was that the one he started with? We've just got to accept that this is the new world order.
Well, you know what? To some degree, he's right about that. It is now the new world order, and it's sad to say.
But yes, I'm thinking of leaving Victoria when there's a window. But as you said, like a lot of us, we don't have the sort of lives where we can just pack up and leave. We've got jobs, families, lots of commitments here.
Yeah, I mean that's the difficulty, isn't it? I wish it was easier, mate. It gets very depressing sometimes, but hey, you know, there's a rainbow at the end of the tunnel somewhere. I just see it as we're the remnant, Tim. We just got to hold out. Could take centuries.
Well, the analogy, the historical analogy that I always use, and I always use in the response to there's heaps of people who criticise the local anti-lockdown freedom advocates here in Melbourne, like, oh, what have you achieved with all your rallies? And it's not, well, communism in Eastern Europe wasn't defeated in 1 year. It took 44 years. I mean, so would you say to a dissident in 1946 Poland or East Germany that just don't bother because you're not achieving anything?
Yeah, I know. It only takes one person. That's real, but it is very hard. I understand, Tim. All the people watching, all those who are activists who go, I want to throw myself into this, and they're going, but it's me banging my head against the wall, and no one else seems to be listening. It's very, very, very hard. But I mean, there's a lot of inspiring examples over the years. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bert Kelly. Bert Kelly was basically the one member of parliament in the 40s and 50s who was advocating for free trade. And everyone told him he was a lunatic. And over time, he convinced people and it came around. And Bert Kelly basically died before he really saw the benefits of it. But, he won the argument at the end of the day. And we will get there. We will get there. There is no doubt. It may take the collapse of Western civilization before people realise, but ultimately, we will win.
Yes, we both hope, and history shows that eventually the good guys get a decent victory.
I have no doubt, Tim. I have no doubt that one day, and probably not during our lifetimes, but one day, everyone will look back and go, wow, the things that people in 2021 did, they'll look at it the same way that they look at slavery 200 years ago and go, how could anyone have ever done that? There's no doubt about that in my mind. I just don't know when it's going to happen.
One of the other interesting memes I saw about that somebody in a face mask and face shield reading about the history of Nazi Germany with them all doing the salute, wondering, but how could they just all comply?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Without getting back onto that topic in any great detail, it has in the last 12 months taught us that now we understand how the Germans.
And there'd be like many people would fall over themselves to dob in Anne Frank.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's all, but the people always say it's not. They wouldn't do it. Them in that situation, they do the right thing. But yet we've seen everyone tested here. I get on buses and people go, "Where's your face mask?" I wish I could just tell them to mind their own business. Well, in fact, mostly I do actually. But it's just so depressing. I know You were probably expecting me to come on tonight and be ranting again like I was 12 months ago. I've gone past. It's a resignation. It's a resignation.
More state of despair. But I've appreciated you coming on tonight because, well, sharing is caring in this in this state of things. And, well, you're in a better city there than I am. Like I'd be much rather.
That's a very low bar.
During a COVID outbreak than being in Melbourne. Like, yes, you're heavily restricted, but it's not full on house arrest.
Yeah. Well, mate, we might be there by this time next week.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We should never say never in this time.
I hope not, but I'm ready for it. Whatever it is, I'm ready for it.
Well, take care, Kyle. You're welcome to hang around for the last bit where I'm just going to update my audience on some of the news that they may have missed. We had breaking this morning that John McAfee, who founded McAfee antivirus software, which got rid of all the viruses on Microsoft Windows Bill Gates computers, he committed suicide while in a Spanish prison while awaiting extradition to the United States on tax evasion charges because the SEC wanted to get to him for hiding cryptocurrency income of more than $23 million. He was arrested in Spain back in 2020. So these are some of his tweets where he said, "I'm content here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I hang myself, ALL Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." We don't know how he committed suicide. I wonder if there's CCTV in that Spanish prison, which might accidentally get wiped like it did with Epstein. Maybe one of his bodyguards there was Hildaleo Clintony.
I don't know if you can still hear me, but I don't know if you've seen any recent interviews with McAfee. Man, the guy gone bananas.
Well, it's stable genius. I mean, every genius is a bit eccentric. Well, there was one that was U.S. president. He ran for the U.S. Libertarian Party nomination in 2016. I mean, he would have been an excellent choice in that election to go up against Trump and Hillary. And instead, they went with boring Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico.
What is Aleppo? What is Aleppo?
Yeah. There's a function of an interview. But yeah, going on to speaking of Hillary, a reporter who did a 2016 story about then U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch being on a Phoenix tarmac with Bill Clinton while his wife Hillary was under criminal investigation. Christopher Sine has died in an apparent suicide. So this is from it's quite a lag there from, like, if you're going to count him towards the Clinton body count, it's nearly, what is it, 5 years. And
Are you still talking to me? Are you still talking to me?
You're welcome to pass a comment if you like. I'm talking.
Sorry, I thought you were talking to your audience now. My apologies.
Yeah, I am. I said you're welcome. When I said you're welcome to stick around, you're welcome still to put in your 2 cents if you like.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, sorry. It's awkward dead air.
And the final story you may have missed is Britney Spears. She is trying to break free of her conservatorship. Her father basically controls her life, her money, even her ability to have more children, all aspects of her life and career. Now, this was instigated in 2007 when she was having those various meltdowns, but she does seem, we haven't heard of any such meltdowns recently, so we can assume that she is much better now, and I think she deserves to break free of that. It sounds horrible that, a conservatorship, like her father can actually implant a contraceptive in her so she can't have children.
That's horrific. I didn't know any of that. I know there was some documentary on Netflix or something about all this, wasn't there? But I didn't watch it. I can't really see myself sitting down and watching a story about the life of Britney Spears. But now I know that it sounds actually quite interesting.
It's so definitely free Britney. And go Melbourne City this weekend. I know you're a Celtic fan in the Scottish Premiership. Do you follow
you? How dare you accuse me of supporting Celtic? How dare you?
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. You accuse. You just accused me of.
It was one of the two clubs.
Rangers, mate. 100%. 100% Rangers. And I'm no communist Fenian Palestinian supporter.
So we're allowed to have the grand final here in Melbourne. Well, they were going to have it in Sydney, but now Sydney is the COVID hotspot, so it's not happening there. And what is it? In a sign that the Northern Hemisphere continues to get over normal, the Euro round of 16 is occurring now.
Yes, and in line with my hatred of all things Celtic, it was good to see Scotland get absolutely trounced.
Well, I'm supporting Germany in the Euros because of my German heritage, Wilms, German name. So they're pretty good most of the time, though they should just cut out the virtue signaling with their keeper wore their rainbow armband to protest Hungary's new anti-LGBT propaganda law, and they wanted to light up the Allianz Arena in Munich in rainbow colours, but UEFA denied them.
Yeah, it's UEFA, what an interesting organisation. It's probably the most corrupt of all sporting organisations in the world. Yet they drew the line at promoting Pride Month. It must be about the only organisation in the world that's done that as well. It's head scratching stuff, mate. It's how do you work it out?
Well, I mean, UEFA as a whole, I mean, it includes conservative Eastern European countries, and if you include all of FIFA, most nations around the world don't recognize same-sex marriage or other. Certainly don't recognize Pride Month.
Sure, but most of the money in UEFA comes from the big 4 or 5 nations, which are all woke Western type countries. They pull the strings, and that's why we haven't seen the end of that European Super League. That will end up happening. It'll just be done under the name of UEFA eventually. That's what the Champions League will become. And it's very sad unless you're a supporter of Bayern Munich or Manchester United. But for those that support smaller or less famous clubs, you're never going to get a look in again.
Yeah, it was a horrendous proposal that European Super League by the big clubs backfired and strengthened UEFA's hand in shaping the future of the Champions League.
Yeah, that's right. What's with all the people on your streams that carry on with all the Jew hatred stuff? I mean, that's just, who are these ning-nongs?
They tend to infect everything various sort of streams, you'll roll them up. You'll have rolled them up even more with that statement now.
What do I care? Roll them up. They're morons anyway. I mean, yeah. And it's just interesting watching it. Bizarre.
Oh, don't worry. They're always at me. What is it? Every show to say, name these people or whatever.
All right. Well, so if you don't have a stream that carries on about Zionist conspiracies, you must be some sort of
controlled opposition. Oh, why don't you just work for Sky News if you like that?
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's the fun of being a public figure in a way, Tim, is it? And you got a YouTube channel you have to put up with the interesting trolls.
I don't have a moderator at the moment. Maybe I'll bring one back next show.
Oh, it's not that bad. It's just sort of bizarre. That's all.
Well, this is, what is it? The unfiltered, uncensored aspect of the internet, which terrifies a lot of people.
Yeah. That's right. I understand that. Anyway, mate. No, mate. Thanks for having me on again. It's been fun.
Yeah. And apologies for mistaking Celtic and Rangers.
That is by far and away the biggest mistake of your life.
When I realized that, I'm like, I've really offended Kyle now.
Did you say you're a Carlton supporter? Did you? Is that what you?
In the A-League, I'm a Melbourne City supporter.
I was talking AFL. Sorry, maybe you don't follow that at all.
Oh, I do follow AFL. I go for Brisbane Lions.
Oh, okay, right, okay. So it'd be like me accusing you of being a Collingwood supporter.
I wouldn't be too offended by that because it's not true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Shows you how much I know about AFL then, because everyone I know who is not a Collingwood supporter tells me that that's the worst possible thing you can be as a Collingwood supporter.
Well, Collingwood, they've imploded since the giant of Eddie McGuire has gone. They've descended into, what is it? It's like the Liberal Party when John Howard lost the 2007 election. It's now a revolving door. The Collingwood board.
Yeah, I've seen that. Isn't it something like Eddie put all his woke mates on the board, and none of them have been elected, and now they're refusing to leave or something, isn't it?
Yeah, they want a spill of the board now at a general meeting of members.
Good luck to them in a way. I'm a long-suffering supporter of an NRL team that it never seems to get anywhere because our board is fairly moronic. Sorry,
which team is that?
West Tigers.
West Tigers.
Yeah. As a follower of my Facebook, it's pretty much the only thing I post about these days is going to Tigers games and getting smashed. As in my team getting smashed, not me getting smashed. It's at least I've had the Rangers in the last 12 months, Tim. It's been something to brighten my day. The Australian cricket team hasn't. My NRL team hasn't.
Brisbane Lions and Melbourne City have been doing well, so and in the Premier League, I go for Chelsea. We won the Champions League this year, so that's not bad.
Yeah, mate. Well, maybe you'll do the trifecta this weekend, maybe.
Hopefully, yes, but I don't normally, as a sports fan, get the trifecta. One of my teams loses. All right,
I'll tell you what. Do you remember there was that weird year? I think it was 2014 when Footscray won the AFL.
No, 2016. Footscray won.
South Sydney won the NRL.
Leicester won the Premier League.
That's it. Leicester City and the Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA. And
what is it? Chicago Cubs won the was it baseball?
That's right. They won the World Series. That's right. Like every team that had been suffering the long-standing hoodoos broke them all in the same year. And anyway, I remember going to the shops, I think, buy a can of drink or something one day, and there's this bloke standing there, and he's wearing Cleveland Cavaliers shorts, a South Sydney jersey, and a Leicester City hat. And I'm going, I just said to him, I bet you followed all of them your whole life too, haven't you? Yeah, right.
Of course, 2016 was upsets for politics as well, with Brexit. Duterte in the Philippines, who now says if you don't get the vaccine, I'll jail you. And of course, Trump in November.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It was a simpler time back then. At least we were free back then.
Yeah. That's right. Mate, we're just rambling now. I'll let you go.
Yeah. Thank you again, Kyle. Thank you to my audience. WilmsFront will be back again next Thursday. Tomorrow night, also Trad Tasman Talk, 6 p.m. Melbourne time on the Unshacked's YouTube channel and Trad Tasman Talk Odyssey. Trad Tasman Talk will also be back starting tomorrow weekly again. So starting to get back all shows weekly. New reports from Tiger Mount with Richard Wollstonecroft coming as well. Remember to check the unshackled.net for our Unshackled Productions archive and also our latest articles. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And I'll see you tomorrow night for Trad Tasman Talk. And again for Tim's News Explosion on Monday, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, back on the WilmsFront channel. And of course, WilmsFront again next Thursday this time as well. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com or Rational Rise TV to view the archive of episodes. And keep visiting the unshackled.net to view all our shows. And to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.